Wait,
Like
old
the
people
kids
can be
want.
relevant?
They can.
Is that what you're saying, Brandon?
Yeah, I am.
I'm shocked
Let's
by
start
it.
with that.
That's how we open with a single frame is old people are relevant.
Just trying to be relevant.
Even though y'all's movie is about a young boy. Interesting.
Who, as we said yesterday, we knew he was a man.
Unfortunately, I found this morning on Twitter, I just typed in, I was saying, tonight, excited, and I hashtag Alexander Boulat, and somebody had put a photo of you, like taken off a TV, and then said, hashtag man, hashtag boy.
Right, please don't do that.
I was like, no, yeah. It was very funny.
Well, let's jump back to that search for the man boy, because
Funny.
I was fascinated when we first were talking yesterday at lunch how you took this leap of faith, really, to go over there and to, I mean, all you had was you went to the gallery, you saw this photo, and you were mesmerized. What made you, though, Jeff, decide, I've got to look into this. There's something about this kid that really appeals to me. There's something about the situation, about the area, about everything that's happened to it. Why did you do this, I guess?
Yeah, it's funny. Anytime we talk about this now, I know he's heard this 1,000 times. I try to think of something new for Brandon, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure there is anything new. So I go to a gallery with my daughter. She's really if there should be a third here chair in a way, my daughter should be one of it, because she's the one that invites me to the gallery. She happens to walk in when I'm in this, it was in a small room off the main hall of the gallery, right? It was actually upstairs. And she happens to walk in when I'm having this out-of-body experience looking at this photograph. And I was wearing flip-flops, in essence, right? I wasn't there to go have an experience. I just went because she asked me to go, but I'm standing in front of this boy and really shattered. And so she comes in, she sees that, and she held that memory, and then 3 years later, she gives me the photograph. So
3 years later is a really interesting part of this story. The fact that, I mean, had you guys talked about, I'm not doing your job, and we probably should have asked you every question, while we were shooting the documentary. But did she, was this constant conversation, or was it like 3 years, put a button in it, and then cut?
I don't think so. And we have talked at length lately about why did you give me this photograph? And she said, she said this fairly recently, within the last year, I wanted to tell you, I know you. I saw you. I saw whatever this thing was, right? And I wanted it to give you a gift. And she said to me, she said, it's like a gift you would give, that watching and then it's seeing something you think is real and then responding to it. So she...
Like the Vitamix you gave me?
Yeah, sort of.
It's sort of like the similar thing.
A blender.
Yeah, I really wanted it.
Personal gift.
Every day I think of you.
You can do a lot of things with a Vitamix. But it sat on my wall for three more years, right? I didn't just willy-nilly go. I didn't go to the gallery, see him, go find him at that moment. I went home, then the picture comes, and it's like, pow, does this have something to do with me? But in the steady drip of it, sitting on the wall, I think, I'm not sure my reaction would be any different than yours or Brandon's. There's a point at which that's not art. She was an artist, but that's not art. That was intended to provoke a person to do something about that, I think. And
it's interesting, though, is that you had a lot of choices in that room. That was a wall filled with what, 18 photographs?
Well, also I put it. I don't think you can tell exactly, but in the project, but it was in front of a window unit, right? It was in front of an air conditioner.
In your office.
And I intentionally never moved it, because what it meant was I had to touch it every day to turn the air on. And I was aware of it being in the way, but I didn't want to move it. And it was a way of keeping it present, that if it was just in a room, it becomes familiar and you sort of lose it, right? But I didn't want that. So I had to touch it all the time. Every day, twice a day.
But deep down, that stems from maybe you wanting this whole time to have looked, because Why did you put it there then?
It fit. Right? It fit perfectly.
Well, it's also other gifts. You have other gifts in your office. The first time I saw the photograph was, going to Jeff's office, and he has like a painting that his son gave him. He has drawings that his daughter and other son have made, and so it's all family stuff and great books, and it's just like the classic, office bookshelf. And then here, right, covering up the air conditioner unit, and it does fit perfectly, is this one photograph. And like Jeff, I think, even says in the documentary, it's the only photograph that wasn't of a family member.
Right.
And so the idea of, wait, how does this fit into my bookshelf that's very personal? It's a personal bookshelf. Jeff writes on everything, so he'll have like a Polaroid that he's written on, his iPad's written on, so everything's just very personal. And so the whole wall's personal, and then there's this photograph, and I feel like Jeff was like, how is this more personal? It's a gift from my daughter, but as you've seen the photograph, it's this boy, and like he said, Alexandra had a point to it. And so I think Jeff was saying, what's the point?
I think that's right. And I think there was a point where, I just thought, what kind of person could you be to sit here and not know how that turned out? If he died, I don't know that I could have kept it. If the story had ended really badly for him, there would be a whole different thing going on. And I think a desire to know what on earth happened to him. Is he okay?
And it's very possible he could have. You know what I mean? With what was going on there, it's not hard to just think, oh, okay, he was one of those that got killed and could have been a casualty. But I think there's another, I don't mean to harp on death, but you told me something very fascinating when we had lunch yesterday. You said, if Alexandra had not passed away, you might not have done this. How did her... I know this is later in the process than getting the photo, this is much later, but how did knowing that she wasn't here maybe force you or impact you into wanting to tackle this? Because maybe you're trying to fulfill what she did by taking the photo, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what your inner thought on that is.
I don't know. It just felt like a hurdle, a kind of a barrier put there almost for a reason, that you can't get to her. But somehow the picture was alive. Something was alive, at least, or maybe I'm just projecting the whole thing, right? That's certainly possible. But there was something that seemed very real about that original experience. There was something about her life that, I don't know, that she didn't deserve to die in some way. I've thought about it a fair bit. I should have a better answer for you. I'll work on that when we finish here.
We'll get back at the end. You can put it, cut it in.
I'd like to revise and extend my remarks.
What's so interesting though is that people have compared this to like the National Geographic photo or something like that. Right. What really separates this is we're talking about a gift. So Jeff is pursuing something that was a gift. So it came out of the gallery and became a gift. And so it had this other layer to it of a personal connection that's much different than just the cover of National Geographic.
We've talked about this too. I did a story once for Dean, and the story was, like Brandon's right, I write in everything. Generally I write in books, right? And so I'll start a letter in a book.
He doesn't like the way they are.
I'll write back to their author, but sometimes I write back.
It's a terrible author.
So I once wrote something in a book about my mom. It was not particularly flattering. It was in a book by Thomas Merton, of all things. Took it to Half Price Books, the big one over, off Central.
Oh, the massive one, yeah.
And I sold a bunch of my books, right? I needed to clear out a bookshelf, so I sold several boxes of books. I sold them to that store. That store has over 300,000 books. As the devil would have it, my mother goes in that store, she goes to that shelf, she buys that book.
There's no way.
Absolutely way. So she calls me a few months, I don't know this, right? She calls me a few months later. In fact, when she's standing there and she's picking the book off the shelf, she opens it and she sees Jeff Bowden, because I'd written my name in it. Didn't take it out. Mistake number 2. So she says, sort of out loud, she can't hold herself. She says, oh my God, this is my son's book. And there's a woman standing next to her who says to her, lady, I don't know who you are, but you should go buy a lottery ticket. This was not true. So anyway, my mother calls me a few months later, upset, right? I've said these things about her. So my inclination, and maybe this is like the photograph, so I call Half Price Books later and I said, look, I've had this experience here. Does this happen to people? Has this ever happened? And they said, well, that kind of stuff happens all the time.
Wow.
So I ended up doing a long story with them about trying to return to someone, they didn't know what book it came out of, a locket of hair. And all that was with it was a funeral notice. No, it wasn't a funeral notice. It was a legal notice for an oil and gas deal in 1935. And from the locket of hair, the book was a certain kind of book. And where the store was, we were able to find that person.
Wow.
And so, anyway, this is in a sense like that. And I think somehow or another, Alexandra not being present, there still felt like there was some kind of energy in that photograph. It had been taken by someone who seemed interesting to me. It seemed like, you need to know he's okay. You need to go do this. So,
To go from 75 in Northwest Highway, shout out Half Price Books,
Yeah.
all the way to Kosovo, that's crazy. I know that's not the connection, but
Right.
that's wild. Brandon, what was it when Jeff approached you and said, hey, I've got an idea for you. What do you feel about that? What made you decide, boy, this is something that I can do? And then you went over there without your camera. You went over there
Right.
without the thought of, I'm going to film this as a documentary. You just went over there.
Right.
What made you decide to do that process?
Well, it happened in stages, which is interesting. Jeff and I had met on my first film just by mutual friends, had stayed in good contact when I moved to Austin, and it wasn't uncommon to get together every maybe 6 months or something. And so this time he said, can we go for coffee? I want to tell you something that's going on. Jeff told me that the whole journey that he was on, and at that time he'd been twice, maybe? So he'd already been searching for the boy and kind of brought me up to speed. And then I think really just as a storyteller and co-adventurer was telling me this and just asking if it was interesting. And I found it incredibly interesting, riveting. I mean, I was into it on so many different layers. The story of the refugee was something that I've been interested in, more connected with my wife's work, where she works with refugees, so that aspect. Then as a photographer, the story of the photographer, and then just as Jeff's journey of being influenced by a photographer to action, as you see in the documentary, real professional, amazing photographers are also moved by the fact that someone would be called to action by something that they did. So I was just invited to come along for the ride, and of course, as a filmmaker, you're always thinking that, but I think there was a purity to coming and just being there and not starting to roll cameras. And in hindsight, I'm so glad that was the approach, because I think if we had come in rolling cameras, it would have been something completely different. And it wasn't until lunch with Vishar that Jeff had already met with, and he started telling us about Alexandra and the way that she gave him his first camera, and we learned about how she would always point the camera the other way, and he started sharing very personal stories. And all along the way, people would really open up to Jeff. And so as a filmmaker, and just as Jeff's experiencing this, we both knew this needs to be shared. The story's bigger than only Jeff going. There's a lot more. Well, it's not bigger. It's all Jeff. It's a bigger story. Yeah. And other people were lending their stories to Jeff. And I just felt that needed to be documented. And so it was on the plane ride home from that first trip that we just said, this story needs to be told. And so then we did start, from that point on, cameras were rolling, but it really started in an honest way.
I was amazed when I was watching the documentary. I think I talked to you guys about certain shots that really impacted me, but the whole concept of a fixer fascinated the hell out of me.
Yeah.
He's here.
Yeah.
He's here, yeah.
Can y'all tell me a bit about connecting with him? I mean, without him, there is no movie.
Absolutely. Without him, there's no I Never Find the Boy, movie or no movie.
Yeah. Don't even know where to begin, really.
Exactly. He's just, we've all met these people where they're the guy. You know, there's a guy at this film festival.
Yeah, that's the guy.
That's
If
the
you need
guy.
something?
Right. Might be a
he's
woman,
the guy.
but there's a
Right.
guy.
Yeah.
And
Might be a woman, but there's a guy.
There's a guy. Doesn't matter what you need. And so, because I went through the gallery where the photograph originally came from, you know, there's always a series of little miracles. And he knew the guy and had said this guy was like the great fixer during the war in Kosovo. And fixers are really interesting because really a fixer who's great for the war in Kosovo or that in Kosovo, he's not going to be able to help you in Syria. It's a very time-specific, place-specific person. Yeah.
Craft.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in a way for that person. And so anyway, the gallery put us in touch with him. The gallerist had been a New York Times photographer during the war. And the fixer, I'm not sure they ever actually worked together in the war, but they knew each other.
Yeah.
Our fixer, Birol Erkin, he had worked for Reuters, he'd worked for some Turkish newspapers, he'd worked for the BBC, and he had worked for the Times. So. And what he said to me was, he didn't speak Turkish. He spoke a little Turkish before he started. He learned how to speak English during the war, and it was like, he said, my first words were all war words. They were like guns, boom, rocket.
Yeah.
Those were all his very first
Don't
English.
go over that bridge.
Yeah.
That's what he knew.
Yeah.
Well, I'm to kind of look at an element of this film that I think life after documentary is always interesting because it's hard to close a documentary. It's hard to find that moment. But you guys are doing something really unique. You're able to bring these folks here, and I know that was a battle in itself.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to do that for all the wonderful people you've been able to meet through the project? And what does that mean for you guys? But also, you guys took them out last night. I mean, there's something very special about that.
We took them kicker dancing.
We did.
At
It was
Broken Spoke.
unbelievable.
It was really funny.
It was unbelievable. And seeing, I mean, some of them were just so thrilled to be having that experience. In fact, all of them. I mean, all of them at other times, just kind of a pure joy. It became a bit of a celebration last night. It felt like this kind of like everything had come full circle, and the gang, I don't even know if it was completely by design until it sort of happened that sort of the original gang that was all in Kosovo then was all kind of reunited, and yet we were here, and so it became, because we'd spent so much time over there searching.
And none of those people knew each other before, or two of them did, I guess.
Yeah.
The husband and wife.
Yeah, they did.
They seemed to.
They did. But it was really incredible seeing them here, and then kind of here to celebrate this journey in the way that it ended so well, you know, so positively. So.
Yeah, first trip to America for all of them, you know, and I know we talked the other day too. Brandon and I were both, we were thrilled, but we were shocked at the role or the place of America inside Kosovo. That's something I had no idea of. In fact, the first time I went, all I knew was Kosovo. I didn't know much, but I knew that Kosovo was 95% Muslim. And my first trip was almost the exact same time as the fall of Libya, and specifically when our ambassador was killed.
Yeah.
And I was a little worried about going into a Muslim country. So I called the embassy in Kosovo and asked them, is this safe to come here? And they were like, you don't know Kosovo. And so for them to get to see America, the country that saved them, is really fantastic. We're getting to see America differently through their eyes, I think.
That's true. And I think we started to see America different through their eyes once we went over there.
Mm-hmm.
Just being in that country and then seeing like a Clinton statue, and then Jeff's talking to people with American T-shirts, not as irony as you know, as celebration. It was wild. That they love Americans over there, and you're embraced instead of ridiculed, and that's odd. You know, that doesn't. I get to travel a lot, and that's not the case.
We got that right. America did. Kosovo. Not just America, the other allied nations. So.
Well, I want to, because I was really moved. I mean, I reached out to you guys pretty early on after seeing the film. I want people to definitely see it. So how can people find out more about it? Give us where people can find out about A Single Frame.
Yeah, asingleframe.com is really sort of the hub for screenings and things. There's of course Facebook and Twitter, but I would say the website is just really well done in terms of if you want to dig a little deeper and see the folks that are involved, see some clips. And
it has on there something that was Brandon's idea from the very beginning, which was, I don't know if you saw it, but there's a page that is, just go through your story.
Yeah, as we were, it's interesting, early on I said, let's call this a single frame. And so then you have a story about a single image. In fact, someone at a party last night says, is it just that picture for an hour and a half? I was like, no, it's not literally a single frame. But because of that, because we kept returning to it, I was interested to see how others would respond to the photograph, because then as we'd spent, a year in this journey, I'd spent so much time with it. I wanted to see how artists would respond. So I asked 7 artists to interpret it, and all I gave them was the same information that Jeff had. So untitled and the little blurb about a refugee boy in the war in Albania, and so they all interpreted it. And so those are all online, and it's really interesting because just now that they put it up, the other artists could see how the other artists responded. But it's really interesting and very diverse, and just a nice kind of companion outside of the film is just sort of an artistic, representation of the photograph. So yeah, so I would send folks there, because we'll continue as the film rolls out to keep that updated.
And definitely follow them on social media. You'll get to see all these wonderful people experiencing Austin.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of photos I know they're taking, so I'm sure that'll end up on the social media. But Jeff, Brandon, thank you guys for the time, and thank you for taking this journey.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.